A new commandment I give you. Love one another. Love one another. I'm rereading a book that I read some years ago. It's a captivating book. It's titled Lest Innocent Blood Be Shed. And it's written by Philip Halley. Now, Halley was an ethicist. He was a college professor. He had been an army soldier during World War II. The rest of the book's title is The Story of the Village of La Chambon and How Goodness Happened There. And it's about an isolated village in southern France during World War II. And the village is composed primarily of French Protestants. Now, what do we call French Protestants? Huguenots. You can say it out loud. Huguenots. And Huguenots are, of course, a people known to South Carolina. A people who, though, I'm looking at a couple of them now, who, though small in number, they strongly influenced our colony and later state. Numerous descendants of Huguenots are not only buried in our churchyard, some are members of this parish today. So the Huguenot pastor during World War II in this French village was named André Trocmé. And historically, or heroically rather, quietly, this pastor and members of his church, they began to harbor Jewish refugees. They helped to provide food, shelter, documents, even transportation to the border with Switzerland when possible. They regularly risked their lives and the lives of their families and fellow villagers to shelter people they did not know. And they did so, I think, with the humility and practicality befitting Huguenots. Why? Why did they do it? First and foremost, they were a community of faith, and this was simply what one did. Second, they remembered that they too had once been a persecuted people, and when their people had needed shelter and safe harbor, they were offered it. As you know, Huguenots were persecuted in France from the 16th, off and on to the 16th to the 18th centuries. Many had to flee. Some made it to Canterbury, where even today there is a weekly French service in the crypt of Canterbury Cathedral. They have what they call this they've had this temporary arrangement with these French Protestants since around the 1500s. A temporary, informal arrangement. Others made it to other parts of the world. As I said, still more arrived here in South Carolina. This Huguenot community of faith in the village of La Chambon remembered that in their time of need 300 years earlier, they had been welcomed and sheltered. They had been given refuge. Incidentally, when in the first pages of the book, the author, he visits the village back in the 1970s to interview people for his research. And he stays in a boarding house that's owned by a Mrs. Marion and her daughter. Marion, of course, a name not uncommon in South Carolina if you've ever heard of the swamp fox. In the 1940s, when townspeople escorted persecuted Jewish persons to the Swiss border, they well knew that they were following the same path that their Huguenot brothers and sisters had traveled in earlier times. Years later, one of the child refugees would say, nobody asked who was Jewish and who was not. Nobody asked where you were from. Nobody asked who your father was or if you could pay. They just accepted each of us, taking us in with warmth, sheltering children, often without their parents, children who cried in the night. And during sermons, because please be over. While the pastor was preparing to depart, his wife served, the pastor was preparing to depart because one evening officers arrived to arrest him. And while he was preparing to leave, his wife served the enemy supper. The arresting officer sat at the table with tears in his eyes, unable to eat the supper given to him. He was so overcome with the kindness and gentleness of the people. In his report, he would describe the villagers as full of love. The pastor would eventually be released and returned, and he and his assistant and the people would continue to shelter refugees. Their quiet, gentle resistance and assistance became something of an open secret. The author writes, the people of La Chambon helped without harming, saved lives without torturing and destroying other lives. They helped without harming. They saved lives. Love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, with all thy mind, with all thy soul, and with all thy strength. This is the first and great commandment. And the second is like unto it, thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself. On these two commandments hang all the law and the prophets. A new commandment I give to you, says Jesus. Love one another as I have loved you. What does this look like for you? For us? Amen.